Hello, my friends. Today you will hear an amazing story about Leonardo da Vinci, a genius of both art and science. Try to use shadow reading, listen to each sentence and repeat it after me. It will help you improve your English and enjoy the story even more. Well then, let's get started. On a warm April morning in the year 1452, in a small village in Italy, a baby was born who would change the world. His name was Leonardo. He did not know it yet, but people would one day call him a genius. They would say he could see what others could not. They would say he had ideas far ahead of his time. Today, we know him as Leonardo da Vinci. He was not only a painter. He was also an inventor, an engineer, and a physicist. He studied the stars, the human body, and the way birds fly. He wanted to understand everything. Leonardo was born in Vinci, a quiet village in Tuscany. His father was a notary. His mother was a peasant girl. They were not married, so Leonardo was called an illegitimate child. This made life harder for him. He could not go to certain schools. He could not do some jobs. But Leonardo did not care. He had a curious mind. He asked questions all the time. Why is the sky blue? How do birds fly? What is light? How does water move? He did not stop asking. When he was still a young boy, he would look at the world for hours. He would watch rivers, clouds, animals, and machines. He would draw everything he saw. He had no formal education, but he taught himself. He was full of wonder. And that wonder became the heart of his science. When he was about 14 years old, Leonardo moved to Florence. There he became an apprentice to a famous artist named Verrocchio. This was the beginning of his training. He learned to paint, to sculpt, and to build things. He also learned how to study nature. He watched how light touched a leaf. He studied how a horse moved its legs. He measured the shapes of waves. His eyes were like a camera, and his hands followed his thoughts. But behind all this, Leonardo was becoming something more than an artist. He was becoming a scientist. In those days, there was no clear line between art and science. To paint a person well, you had to know the muscles under the skin. To draw a flying machine, you had to know how air moves. Leonardo understood this deeply. He believed that to create, you must first understand. And so he began to study everything he could. One of the first things that fascinated him was water. He watched how rivers curved, how waves crashed, how drops fell. He thought of water as a living thing. He drew it again and again. He also tried to explain how it moved. His drawings of water are not just beautiful, they are also accurate. He saw spirals, whirlpools, and patterns that modern physics now studies in fluid mechanics. He even wrote that water was the blood of the earth. No one had said that before. Another of his great loves was flight. Birds made him dream. He studied their wings, their bones, and their feathers. He would stand for hours, watching birds glide across the sky. He wrote about lift, drag, and pressure. He built wings made of cloth and wood. He tested flying machines with pedals, with screws, even with flapping wings. He never got one to fly, but his work was not a failure. His ideas were the roots of modern aviation. Long before airplanes, Leonardo imagined the sky filled with human flight. But Leonardo's most powerful scientific tool was his notebook. He filled thousands of pages with notes, sketches, and questions. He wrote from right to left, in mirrored script. Some people say he did this to keep his ideas secret. Others say it was just easier for him, as a left-handed man. Whatever the reason, his notebooks are a treasure. In them, we find the mind of a scientist at work, observing, thinking, testing, correcting. He studied physics through the world around him. He looked at how objects fall. He tested the speed of light. He tried to understand force and motion. He wrote about the laws of balance, the lever, and the screw. He knew that machines were like bodies, with muscles, joints, and bones. He saw connections everywhere. He wanted to build machines that worked like nature. In fact, many of his drawings show ideas that would only be built hundreds of years later: tanks, helicopters, bridges, robots. One of the most amazing things about Leonardo is that he did not just write theories. He wanted to prove them. He wanted to test them. He would do experiments, build models, and record what worked and what did not. This way of thinking was not common in his time. Most people believed what ancient books said. But Leonardo trusted what he saw with his own eyes. He said that experience was the true teacher. Not everyone liked this. Some people feared his ideas. They thought he was strange. They said he did not respect tradition. Some even whispered that he had magical powers. Stories began to grow around him. People said he could speak to animals. That he built a mechanical lion that could walk. That he had visions of the future. These stories were not all true. But they show how people saw him, as someone from another world. And in many ways, he was. He lived in a time of swords and candles, but he dreamed of rockets and engines. He lived before the laws of physics were written, but he was already thinking about them. He asked questions that would take scientists hundreds of years to answer. He was not a man of his time. He was a man of all time. When Leonardo da Vinci became a grown man, people from many cities wanted him to come work for them. They wanted him to paint great walls, to design buildings, to build machines, and to create statues. Dukes, kings, and generals all wrote to him. They knew he was special. But Leonardo was not only a painter. He did not think like others. While people saw war, he thought about wind. While others built castles, he studied waves and shadows. His heart was always with science. He lived in Milan for many years. There, he worked for Duke Ludovico Sforza. The Duke wanted him to make art and weapons. And Leonardo did both. He painted great works. But he also made blueprints for strange machines, catapults, cannons, bridges, armored wagons. He never stopped thinking. He once said, "Art is the queen of all sciences." For him, painting was not just about beauty. It was a way to study light, motion, and the laws of nature. One day, while walking through the city, he saw a soldier riding a horse. The way the muscles moved under the horse's skin fascinated him. That day, he began to study anatomy even more deeply. He asked permission to go into hospitals. He watched doctors work. And late at night, he performed dissections. He opened the human body to learn how it worked. This was very rare at the time. It was even dangerous. But Leonardo did it because he wanted the truth. He studied the brain, the heart, the lungs, and the eye. He made detailed drawings of bones, muscles, and nerves. His sketches looked like photographs, so accurate, so alive. He was not just drawing, he was discovering. He found out that the heart has 4 chambers. He drew the flow of blood through the body. He wrote down how the eye bends light. Much of this knowledge was lost after his death and only rediscovered centuries later. But Leonardo had already seen it. His physics grew from these studies. He wanted to understand not only how the body moves, but why it moves. What is force? What is motion? What is gravity? These questions filled his notebooks. He wrote about levers and pulleys, about gears and weights. He noticed that a small force, if used the right way, can lift something large. He saw that motion always has a cause. These are basic ideas of physics today. But Leonardo wrote them down long before Newton was born. He also studied the nature of time. He noticed how things slow down when pushed through water. He timed how fast objects fell. He even tried to build clocks. His notes show his thoughts about acceleration and speed. He did not have the math that later scientists used. But he had deep insight. He trusted his eyes, his hands, and his tests. That made his science strong. Many people do not know this, but Leonardo also studied sound. He listened to echoes and tried to measure how sound traveled. He built musical instruments not just for fun, but to study vibration. He understood that sound moves in waves. He believed that everything in nature had a rhythm, from the wings of birds to the flow of rivers. One of his most famous ideas was the aerial screw, a spiral-shaped machine meant to lift into the air. It looked like a modern helicopter. He never built it. But the drawing is still here, and engineers today study it with wonder. Could it have worked? Some believe it might, with better materials. Others say no. But one thing is sure, Leonardo had imagined flight long before it was possible. He also imagined machines that could walk, swim, and even think. There are drawings of a robot knight that could move its arms and open its mouth. He drew gears and springs and weights that acted like muscles. He wanted to bring machines to life. This dream of movement, of control, of human-like machines, this was physics and engineering before the age of science. Not everyone understood what Leonardo was doing. Some said he was wasting time. Others said he was hiding secret knowledge. A few even called him a sorcerer. There are stories, some true, some legend, that he built a silver bird that could fly for a few seconds. That he created a lion that walked and opened its chest to give flowers. That he made a mirror that showed the future. These stories may sound strange, but they show something real. People knew he was different. They saw him as more than a man. He was a mystery. Leonardo himself never explained everything. He did not publish his discoveries. He wrote them in notebooks and kept them close. Why? Some say he feared the church. Others say he was waiting to finish them. Or maybe, he just loved the search more than the answer. He once wrote, "Learning never exhausts the mind." And truly, his mind never stopped. Even when he was old, he kept asking questions. He moved to France, where the king gave him a home and called him the first painter, engineer, and architect of the kingdom. There, Leonardo kept drawing, studying, dreaming. He became slower, yes. His hand trembled. But his mind burned bright. He died in 1519. He was 67 years old. At his side were his notebooks, full of inventions, thoughts, and dreams. But his work did not die. In fact, much of it was not even discovered until centuries later. When people opened his notebooks, they saw ideas that matched modern science. They saw machines that looked like real engines. They saw anatomy better than most doctors had ever drawn. And they realized, this man had lived far ahead of his time. After Leonardo da Vinci died, many people remembered him as a great artist. They spoke of the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. They remembered his flying machines and strange sketches. But very few knew just how much science he had done. His notebooks were left behind, scattered across Europe. Some were lost. Some were hidden in private collections. Some were locked away for hundreds of years. Because of this, much of Leonardo's scientific work remained unknown for a long time. People called him a genius without knowing why. They thought he only painted. But slowly, one page at a time, the world began to discover what he had really done. And what people found was amazing. One notebook had drawings of the human heart. They were so detailed, doctors in the 20th century said they were better than modern medical diagrams. Another notebook showed how light reflects off water and glass. He drew it with lines and angles, almost like a physicist today. Another had pictures of machines that looked like cars, cranes, and airplanes. Page after page showed ideas no one else had ever dreamed of, not in his time. Leonardo had studied physics, engineering, biology, optics, and mechanics, all without going to university. He did it through questions and careful observation. He used his eyes like tools. He used his hands to measure, build, and draw. In one notebook, he wrote, "He who does not value life, does not deserve it." He wanted to understand life in its deepest form, how it moved, how it breathed, how it worked. One of the most mysterious things about Leonardo was how he could imagine the future. Some people say he had visions. Others say he was just very smart. But it is true, he predicted ideas that came centuries later. He understood the idea of blood circulation, long before doctors proved it. He wrote about solar energy, the structure of the eye, and the laws of motion. Some of his notes even show ideas about what we now call gravity and inertia, years before Galileo or Newton. And then there are the stories. So many stories surround Leonardo's name. Some are myths. Some may be true. One tale says that he built a mirror where a person could see their true self, not just their face. Another tells of a silver bird that flew for a moment over the rooftops of Florence. There is even a story that he tried to build a giant horse made of bronze, bigger than anything ever made, but war stopped him. These stories are like legends, half-truths, half-dreams. But they show how magical people thought he was. Even his most famous painting, the Mona Lisa, is wrapped in mystery. People say the woman in the painting has a secret smile. Some believe it is a self-portrait. Others think it holds hidden codes. Some scientists even studied her eyes with special scanners, trying to find letters or numbers. Leonardo never explained the painting. He left it for the world to wonder. Just like his science, full of questions, full of beauty, never fully solved. Many years after his death, when the modern world began to understand physics better, people started comparing his notes to the work of famous scientists. They were shocked. How could a man in the 1400s write things that sounded like Newton or Galileo? How did he know so much without using equations? The answer is that Leonardo saw science through pictures. He saw it with his eyes, not with numbers. He believed that if you could draw a thing clearly, you understood it. And so his notebook became his laboratory. In the end, Leonardo's true power was not just in what he discovered, but in how he thought. He connected everything, the motion of a fish, the curve of a leaf, the arc of a star in the sky. He did not separate science and art. To him, they were one. To understand the world was to feel it, draw it, test it, question it, again and again. Centuries later, when people began to read his pages, they finally saw the full man. Not just an artist. Not just a dreamer. But a scientist with deep thoughts and brilliant ideas. A physicist who never used the word physics, but who studied it every day of his life. And that is why Leonardo da Vinci remains one of the greatest minds in history. He lived in a time of candles and castles, but he thought like a man from the future. His notebooks are now kept in museums and libraries. Scientists still study them. Engineers still learn from them. Artists still admire them. Today, when we build machines, study space, or explore the human body, we follow a path Leonardo helped to light. He may not have finished all his work. He may not have explained every idea. But he gave us something even greater, the desire to wonder. And maybe that is the most important gift of all. Today, many people know the name Leonardo da Vinci. His face is in books. His paintings are in museums. His flying machines are shown in documentaries. But the most important thing about Leonardo is not just what he made, it is how he thought. Leonardo believed that every question was important. Even a simple question could lead to great discoveries. He once asked, "Why do birds fly in circles?" Another time, he wondered, "Why is the sky blue?" These may sound like small thoughts. But for Leonardo, no thought was small. He believed that truth lived in the details. He did not always write big answers. His notebooks are full of short ideas, quick drawings, half-finished notes. But together, they show a mind that never stopped working. Leonardo was always watching. Always listening. Always asking. He did not divide science and art. To him, they were the same. To paint a person, he needed to understand bones and muscles. To design a machine, he had to study motion and force. To draw a bird in flight, he had to know about air and gravity. He used science to make better art. And he used art to explore science. Many people think he was born too early. His ideas were often hundreds of years ahead of his time. He dreamed of flying machines in the 1400s. He studied blood flow before doctors understood the heart. He wrote about motion and time before physics had names for them. But maybe Leonardo was born at the perfect time. He lived when the world was full of mystery. And he gave people a new way to see it. He showed that questions could lead us forward. That it was okay not to know something, as long as we kept looking. Leonardo once wrote, "As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a well-used life brings happy death." He lived such a life. And he left the world more curious, more beautiful, and more awake.